Hello everybody, this is Robert with Deep Thought Cycle, and I'm leaving home way too late tonight. Way too late. I wanted to not be leaving so late. Of course, I didn't want to leave this late. Had to take care of some business and do my job. So here I am, leaving late. And like much later than I wanted to. Yeah. Which means I'll be up later than I wanted to tonight when I go home. And the saga of no sleep continues. Well, my camera has DIN. DIN is Chinese for power, right? My camera has full power in the battery. And my phone does not have power. Isn't that nice? That's like a little sweet thing. Sweet tidbit of pain in the ass. But received a comment says that these tires should be 5 bar. I thought they should be 6 bar. I'm pretty sure it says 6 bar on the side of these tires. It might be because I'm running 700 by 38, I think. So it might go up to 6. I'm not sure. That is to the nice gentleman that wrote that comment. I barely read the comments. I just saw that the YouTube link on YouTube on News Cypher's not working. I even forgot to put some videos up, I think. I'm trying. I showed the News Cypher to a couple of my friends' parents.
12.8.
Well, they were parents of my friends, but and I go there to check out the links on my own YouTube site, and they're not pointing to the right website. Unbelievable, huh? That's alright. Better than like a destroyed rocket booster or something, right? I'll fix that when I get home. And I'll charge the phone when I go home too. Alright, so yesterday, as I now ride on every Monday and Tuesday, yesterday I tried to run the debate and give commentary. You know, like the moderators give commentary, and my camera died. Like, so I talked the whole way home to myself, and I got home and the fucking camera died. It was all for nothing. So I thought, well, fuck. I'm sorry, not talking like that. I thought, gosh darn it, I'm not gonna redo that again. But the more I think about it, It's just so astonishing. So I've got to do it again. So for all the people out there that don't like politics, I'm not doing this to be political. I just like think deeply about this situation. As it seems like this is a crazy time, but I want to talk about it with you guys a little bit. So I'm going to play it now, but with my luck, my battery will run out of my phone. With my luck, the battery will run out right when I start to talk, and the camera battery will work. So then we'll just have the normal vlog. All right, so let's start it up. Fire up the old version of the Nexus phone.
Average speed 17.7,
which is much cheaper than the new Pixel phone. I mean, $1,000 for a phone? You gotta be kidding me, man. In this economy, it's like everybody wants to be Kardashian. All right, so let's start it up.
Funding for this PBS election special is provided by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and viewers like you.
Like you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I know more about ISIS than the generals do, believe me.
I have sat at that table in the Situation Room.
Nobody knows the system better than me. I alone can fix it.
I'm going to close my campaign focused on opportunities for kids and fairness
That's
for
kind
families.
of biased intro, huh?
Failed on the economy. Everything she touched didn't work out. Nothing.
Even if you're totally opposed to Donald Trump, you may still have some questions about me.
Sounds pretty biased intro for PBS. Wow. Did you hear how they did that?
Good evening, I'm Gwen Eiffel. And I'm Judy Woodruff, and welcome to this PBS NewsHour special.
We're gonna
fact-checking Donald all the time. I'd never get to talk about anything. So this is who Donald Trump is, and the question for us,
listen to this. Let's
our
do something
country must answer.
Okay. Our country.
This is not who we are. That's why, to go back to your question,
who are you?
I want to send a message, we all should, to every boy and girl, and indeed to the entire world.
That's a pretty girl on a scooter.
America already is great, but we are great because we are good.
Wow.
And we will respect one another.
We're great because we're good.
With one another. And we will celebrate our diversity.
Celebrate!
These are very important values to me.
Oh my
this
God.
is the America that I know and love.
Oh,
And
zombies!
I can pledge to you tonight.
Zombie
This
cheer!
is the America that I will serve if I'm so fortunate enough to become your president.
The great America.
I want to get to some questions
Well,
from
I'm
online.
to that.
What the hell does that mean?
I am.
Yes, you can respond to that.
It's just words, folks. It's just words. Those words, I've been hearing them for many years. I heard them when they were running for the Senate in New York, where Hillary was going to bring back jobs to upstate New York.
How did
and
she get that
failed.
job?
I've heard them where
How do you
Hillary's
become
constantly
senator?
talking about the
Where's
inner
the
cities of our
traffic?
country, which are a disaster.
What do you know about it?
Education-wise, job-wise, safety-wise,
He doesn't
in
care.
every way possible.
Business don't
I'm going to
care.
help the African Americans. I'm going to help them.
17.6.
I am going to help the inner cities. She's done a terrible job for the African Americans. She wants their vote.
It's gonna be
and
helpful.
She does nothing, and then she comes back 4 years later. We saw that firsthand when she was a United States Senator. She campaigned where the
Mr. Trump, I want to get to audience questions and online questions.
Oh, okay.
She's allowed to do that, but I'm not allowed to respond.
You're going to get to respond right now.
That sounds fair.
This tape is generating intense interest. In just 48 hours,
the
it's become
tape.
the single most talked about story of the entire 2016 election on Facebook, with millions and millions of people discussing it on a social network.
Oh my God.
As we said a moment ago, we do want to bring in questions from voters around the country via social media, and our first stays on this topic. Jeff from Ohio.
That's not what's on my Facebook.
Trump says the campaign has changed him. When did that happen? So, Mr. Trump, let me add to that. When you walked off that bus at age 59, were you a different man, or did that behavior continue until just recently? And
what
you have 2 minutes for this.
I told you, that was locker room talk. I'm not proud of it. I am a person who has great respect for people, for my family, for the people of this country.
Are we talking about?
Certainly, I'm not proud of it.
One-legged children.
That was something that happened. If you look at Bill Clinton, far worse, minor words, and his was action. His was what he's done to women. There's never been anybody in the history of politics in this nation that's been so abusive to women. So you can say any way you want to say it, but Bill Clinton was abusive to women. Hillary Clinton attacked those same women and attacked them viciously. 4 of them here tonight.
Oh my God.
One of the women,
this is like
a wonderful woman, at 12 years old, was raped.
Oh, raped.
At 12.
That's awful.
She represented, got him off, and she's seen laughing on 2 separate occasions.
What are we talking about?
Who was raped. Kathy Shelton,
is this about Afghanistan?
Is here with us tonight. So
what are we talking about here?
Words. I am
is it about the WTO?
I apologize for those words.
It's a joke.
It is things that
they
people
both love the shit.
But what President Clinton did, he was impeached. He lost his license to practice law. He had to pay an $850,000 fine to one of the women. Paula Jones, who's also here tonight. And I will tell you that when Hillary brings up a point like that, and she talks about words that I said 11 years ago.
Big business.
I think it's disgraceful, and I think she should be ashamed of herself, if you want to know the truth.
Can we please hold the applause? Secretary Clinton, you have 2 minutes. Well, first, let me start by saying that so much of what he's just said is not right, but he gets to run his campaign any way he chooses. He gets to decide what he wants to talk about.
She's great.
Instead of answering people's questions, talking about our agenda, laying out the plans that we have,
what plans?
Make at our country, that's his choice.
Mice and men.
When I hear something like that, I am reminded of what my friend Michelle Obama advised us all.
She's got a friend.
When they go low, you go high.
Oh, right. That's where the spy planes fly. They fly high.
If this were just about one video, maybe what he's saying tonight would be understandable. But everyone can draw their own conclusions at this point about whether or not the man in the video or the man on the stage respects women.
Let's talk about the video from WikiLeaks. He never
apologizes for anything to anyone.
What about the fucking helicopters?
He never apologized to Mr. and Mrs. Khan.
How
the
about
Gold Star family?
Snowden,
whose son, Captain Khan, died in the line of duty
Captain Khan.
in Iraq. And Donald insulted and attacked them for weeks.
How many people did he have to kill first?
He never apologized to the distinguished federal judge who was born in Indiana.
Distinguished.
But Donald said he couldn't be trusted to be a judge because his parents were, quote, Mexican.
Oh, Jesus.
He never apologized to the reporter that he mimicked and mocked on national television. And our children were watching.
The
and he never
fucking uranium
for the
shells and the children
President Obama was not born
walking around with one leg.
In the United States of America. He owes the president an apology.
What are we talking about?
Country an apology, and he needs to take responsibility for his actions and his words.
What about you?
Well,
and all your armies.
An apology because, as you know very well, your campaign, Sidney Blumenthal. He's another real winner that you have, and he's the one that got this started along with your campaign manager, and they were on television just
what are we talking
2
about?
weeks ago. She was saying
how
exactly
many minutes
that, so you really owe him
of nothing.
an apology. You're the one that sent the pictures around your campaign.
What are we listening
sent
to?
The pictures around with President Obama in a certain garb.
Jesus
That was long
Christ.
before I was ever involved, so you actually owe an apology. And number 2, Michelle Obama. I've gotten to see the commercials that they did on you.
Huh.
And I've gotten to see some of the most vicious commercials I've ever seen of Michelle Obama talking about you, Hillary.
What are we talking about?
Friend, go back and take a look at those commercials. A race where you lost, fair and square.
Oh my God.
Unlike the Bernie Sanders race where you won, but not fair and square.
Some truth.
And all you have to do is take a look at WikiLeaks and just see what they said about Bernie Sanders and see what Deborah Wasserman Schultz had in mind.
Big business going for power play.
Super delegates and Deborah Wasserman
Not
Schultz.
supposed to talk about that.
I was so surprised to see him.
That's against the code.
But when you talk about apology, I think the one that you should really be apologizing for, and the thing that you should be apologizing for, are the 33,000 emails that you deleted. And then you acid
How about the $38 billion?
Boxes of emails and other things
How about
week
NAFTA
that were taken from an office and are now missing.
24.
Tell me what.
I didn't think I'd say this, but I'm going to say it. And I hate to say it. But if I win,
say it.
I am going to instruct my Attorney General to get a special prosecutor
wow, that's
to look into your situation, because there has never been so many lies.
Like she's the only one.
Deception.
Oh,
there has never been anything like it, and we're going to have.
He could be the president of China.
When I speak, I go out and speak. The people of this country are furious. In my opinion, the people that have been long-term workers at the FBI are furious.
Fuck the FBI.
There's never been anything like this where emails and you get a subpoena. You get a subpoena, and after getting the subpoena, you delete 33,000 emails, and then you acid wash them or bleach them.
Not supposed to talk about that.
Process. So we're going to get a special prosecutor, and we're going to look into it, because you know what? People have been, their lives have been destroyed
like
for
big
doing
business really cares
of what you've done, and it's a disgrace. And honestly, you ought to be ashamed of it.
Secretary Clinton, I want to. I'm going to let you talk about it, because everything he just said is absolutely false. But I'm not surprised. In the first debate, the audience needs to call back here. That it would be impossible to be fact-checking Donald all the time. I'd never get to talk about anything I want to do.
No facts anywhere.
To really make lives better for
anything.
People. So, once again,
don't even think about it.
HillaryClinton.com. We have literally Trump. You can fact check him.
Go to Hillary Clinton.
Fact check him in real time.
Fuck
Last time at the first debate, we had millions of people
smoke this crack
fact checking. So I expect we'll have millions more fact checking because you know it is.
They're always so honest with them facts.
It's just good that someone with the temperament of
Donald
Trump is not in charge of the law in our country.
Yet?
Because you'd be in jail.
Secretary Clinton.
I want to remind the audience to please not...
don't talk! Audience,
out loud. Please do not applaud.
Don't talk out loud.
And Secretary Clinton, I do want to follow up on emails. You've
on the
said
power
your
play
of your emails was a mistake. You disagreed with FBI Director James Comey, calling your handling of classified information, quote, extremely careless. The FBI said that there were 110 classified emails that were exchanged, 8 of which were top secret, and that it was possible hostile actors did gain access to those emails. Don't call that extremely careless.
Well, Martha, first let me say, and I've said it, that was a mistake, and I take responsibility for using a personal email account. Obviously, if I were to do it over again, I would not. I'm not making any excuses. It was a mistake,
talking
and
about
I'm very sorry
something
about that.
really
but
yet?
I think it's also important.
How about Snowden's email? Let's read those.
Some misleading accusations
Man,
from critics
how
and
about
others.
WikiLeaks?
After a year-long investigation, there is no evidence that anyone hacked the server I was using, and there is no evidence that anyone can point to at all Anyone who says otherwise has
got
no
her
basis
ass covered.
that any classified material ended up in the wrong hands. I take classified materials very seriously.
I'm sure she does.
And always have. When
She's
I was
got
on
lots
the
of
Senate Armed Services
secrets.
Committee, I was privy to a lot of
How
classified
did she get in
material.
this committee?
Obviously, as Secretary of State, I had
How did she get
some
that
of the
fucking job?
most important secrets that we
She was
possess,
Bill
such
Clinton's
as
wife?
going after Bin Laden.
Oh, yeah.
So I am very
Bin Laden.
committed to
Look at
taking
his head
classified
nodding.
information seriously. And as I said, there is no evidence that any classified information ended up in the wrong hands.
Okay, we're going to move on.
And
It
yet,
should. What are the wrong
she
hands?
didn't know the letter C on a document, right? She didn't even know what that letter meant. You know, it's amazing. I'm watching Hillary go over facts.
Oh my
And
God.
she's going after fact after fact.
So long
and
and
she's
haven't
lying
talked
again
yet.
because she said what she did with the emails was
How
fine. You think
about
it was
read
fine to delete 33,000
the
emails? I don't
emails
think so.
from
They said
WikiLeaks?
that 33,000 emails had to do
Let's
with
talk
her
about those
daughter's
emails.
wedding, number one, and a yoga class. Well, maybe we'll give 3 or 4 or 5 or something.
Tesla.
33,000 emails deleted. And now she's
Oh, look at
saying
these guys.
there wasn't anything wrong.
Where are
And
the
more
bikes?
importantly, that was after getting a subpoena. That wasn't before. That was after. She got it from the United States Congress. And I'll be honest, I am so disappointed in congressmen, including Republicans, for allowing this to happen. Our Justice Department, where her husband goes onto the back of an airplane for 39 minutes, talks to the Attorney General days before a ruling is going to be made on her case. But for you to say,
Come on, man.
there was nothing wrong
Kingdom.
with you deleting 39,000 emails.
39,000 emails.
You did, and this is after getting a subpoena from the United
Fucking
States
why
Congress.
not email email? Where's
Where's
WikiLeaks email?
A chance here in jail, let alone after getting a subpoena from the United States
Oh,
Congress.
come on.
We have to move on to an audience question.
Move
Look,
on. I got
it's
a
just
question.
not true. And so please
Oh,
go
you didn't delete them?
Allow her to respond, please.
personal emails, not official.
33,000?
Not, well, we turned over 35,000. So
20.2.
Please
got so
allow her to
many
respond.
emails,
She
man.
didn't talk while you talked.
Who reads
yes,
all that
that's
shit?
true. I didn't.
you
I
have
didn't
nothing
in
to
the
do.
first debate, and I'm going to
They
try
got so
not to
much
in this
email.
debate because I'd like to get to the questions that the people have
38,000
brought
emails?
here tonight to talk to us
Jesus
about.
And get
Christ.
off this question.
Okay, Donald, I know you're into big diversion tonight. Anything to avoid talking about your campaign and the way it's exploding and the way Republicans are leaving you.
Jesus.
But
Let's
at
see what
least
happens.
focus
Allow her to
on some of the
respond.
issues
Allow her to respond.
that people care about tonight. Let's get to their questions.
We have a question here from Ken Karpowitz. He has a question about health care. Ken?
Hey, Ken.
I'd like to know, Anderson, why aren't you bringing up the emails? I'd like to know. Why aren't you
We
getting
brought up
to
the
bottom?
emails.
No, it hasn't. It hasn't. And it hasn't been finished at all.
Ken Karpowitz has a question.
It's nice to 1 on 3.
Thank you. Affordable Care Act, known as Obamacare, it is not affordable. Premiums have gone up, deductibles have gone up,
Israel
co-pays
got
have gone
$38
up,
billion.
prescriptions have gone up.
We buy
and
new
the coverage has gone
planes,
down.
new bombs.
What will you do to bring the costs down?
I'll
and
kill
make
more
coverage
children.
better?
More
That
war.
first goes to Secretary Clinton because you started out at the last one to the
More
audience.
war.
He wants to start, he can start.
Just-
No, go ahead, Donald.
No, I'm a gentleman, Hillary. Go ahead.
Secretary Clinton?
More
I
war.
think Donald was about to say he's going to solve it by repealing it and getting rid of the Affordable Care Act. And I'm
Affordable.
going to fix it because I agree with
Why
you.
not free?
Premiums have gotten too high, co-pays, deductibles, prescription drug costs, and I've
Who
laid out a
cares?
series of actions that we can take to try to
Yes.
get those costs down.
Take out
But
Saddam
here's what I don't
Hussein.
want people to forget when we're
Gaddafi.
talking about
Start
reining in
another
the costs,
war.
which has to be the
More
highest
oil.
priority of the next president.
That's a
When
priority.
the Affordable Care Act passed, it wasn't just that 20 million people got insurance who didn't have it before, but
Oh,
that
shit.
in and of itself was a good thing. I meet these people all the time, and
Oh.
they tell me what a difference
All
having
the
that
time.
insurance meant
Did you
to
meet
them
her?
and their families. But everybody else, the 170 million of us who get
Us.
health insurance through our employers, got big benefits. Number one,
Us.
insurance companies can't deny you coverage because of a pre-existing condition.
Why
Number
not
two,
give
no
free
lifetime
healthcare?
limits,
Got
which
free
is a
bombs.
big deal if you have serious health problems.
Big deal.
Number three,
It's a big
women
deal.
can't be charged more than men for
Women.
health insurance, which is the way it used to be before the Affordable Care Act. Number 4, if you're under 26 and your parents have a policy, you can be on that policy until the age of 26, something that didn't happen before. So I want very much to save what works and is good about the Affordable Care Act.
Don't give a fuck.
But we've got to get costs down. We've got to provide some additional help to small businesses.
More war.
To provide health insurance. But if we repeal it, as Donald has proposed, and start over again, all of those benefits I just mentioned are lost to everybody.
Free
not just
school.
People who get their health
no
insurance
more free
on the exchange.
airplanes.
And then we would have to start all over again. Right now we are at 90% health insurance coverage. That's the highest we've ever been in our country. So I want us to get to 100%, but get costs down and keep quality up.
Mr. Trump, you have 2 minutes.
We'll kill you with the food.
It's such a great question, and it's maybe the question I get almost more than anything else outside of defense.
Talk about defense.
Obamacare is a disaster. You know it. We all know it.
Who knows it?
It's going up at numbers that nobody's ever seen worldwide. Nobody's ever seen numbers like this for health care.
What gives a fuck in China?
It's only getting worse. In 17, it implodes by itself. Their method of fixing it is to go back and ask Congress for more money, more and more money. We have right now almost $20 trillion in debt.
How about the fucking wars?
It's very bad health insurance. Far too expensive. And not only expensive for the person that has it, unbelievably expensive for our country. It's going to be one of the biggest line items very shortly. We have to repeal it and replace it with something absolutely much less expensive and something that works, where your plan can actually be tailored. We have to get rid of the lines around the state, artificial lines, where we stop insurance companies from coming in and competing because they wanted President Obama and whoever was working on it. They love you lines because that gives the insurance companies essentially monopolies. We want to help you. You will have the finest health care plan there is. She wants to go to a single-payer plan, which would be a disaster, somewhat similar to Canada. Have you ever noticed the Canadians, when they need a big operation, when something happens, they come into the United States?
Never noticed that.
Because their system is so slow. It's catastrophic in certain ways.
Never heard that
before. She wants
before.
to go to single-payer, which means the government basically rules everything.
I never heard that.
Hillary Clinton has been after this for years. Obamacare was the first step. Obamacare is a total disaster. And not only are your rates going up by numbers that nobody's ever believed, but your deductibles are going up. So that unless you get hit by a truck, you're never going to be able to use it. It is a disastrous plan, and it has to be repealed and replaced.
Secretary Clinton, let me follow up with you. Your husband called Obamacare, quote, the craziest thing in the world, saying that small business owners are getting killed as premiums double, coverage is cut in half. Was he mistaken, or was his mistake simply telling the truth?
No, I mean, he clarified what he meant, and it's very clear. Look, we have a situation in our country where if we were to start all over again, we might come up with a different system. But we have an employer-based system.
Stopped all the wars.
The vast majority of people get their health care. And the Affordable Care Act was meant to try to fill the gap between people who were too poor and couldn't put together any resources to afford health care.
Why are they so poor?
Obviously Medicare, which is a single-payer system, which takes care of our elderly and does a great job doing it, by the way. And then all the people who were employed,
they just bought EpiPen, right?
Working but didn't have the money to afford insurance.
Why don't they have the money?
Or anybody else to help them.
Why?
That was the slot that the Obamacare approach was to take. And like I say, 20 million people now have health insurance. So if we just rip it up and throw it away, what Donald's not telling you is we just turn it back to the insurance companies the way it used to be. And that means the insurance companies get to do pretty much whatever they want.
You've always been fucked.
Saying, look, I'm sorry, you've got diabetes, you had cancer, your child
Why
has
do they have
asthma,
cancer?
you may not be able to have insurance.
Why diabetes?
So let's
because they can't have good food.
But let's not throw it away and give it all back to the insurance companies.
Let me follow up with you, Mr.
Why did so many people got diabetes and cancer?
Just one thing. First of all, Hillary, everything's broken about it. Everything. Number two, Bernie Sanders said that Hillary Clinton has very bad judgment. This is a perfect example of
Trump's vice president.
You said you want to end Obamacare. You said you want to end Obamacare. You also said you want to make coverage accessible for people with pre-existing conditions. How do you force insurance companies to do that if you're no longer mandating that every American get insurance?
You're going to have plans.
What does that mean?
Well, I'll tell you what it means. You're going to have plans that are so good because we're going to have so much competition in the insurance industry. Once we break out the lines and allow the competition to
compete to not compete.
Are you going to have a mandate that Americans have to have health insurance?
President Obama, by keeping those lines, the boundary lines,
naturally,
and it was almost gone.
Give you what's best.
Just very toward the end of the passage of Obamacare.
Fight to the bottom.
Which, by the way, was a fraud. You know that because Jonathan Gruber, the architect of Obamacare, he said it was a great lie. It was a big lie. President Obama said you keep your doctor, you keep your plan. The whole thing was a fraud, and it doesn't work. But when we get rid of those lines, you have competition, and we will be able to keep pre-existing. We'll also be able to help people that don't have
17.
And Republicans feel this way, believe it or not, and strongly this way. We're going to block grant into the states. We're going to block grant into Medicaid into the states so that we will be able to take care of people without the necessary funds to take care of them.
20.2.
Companies care.
All right. There are 3.3 million Muslims in the United States, and I'm one of them. You've mentioned working with Muslim nations, but with Islamophobia on the rise,
kill them.
People like me deal with the consequences
We work
of being
real
labeled
good with them.
as a threat to the country after the election is over. Mr. Trump, you're first.
We love killing brown people.
You're right about Islamophobia, and that's a shame. But one thing we have to do is we have to make sure that, because there is a problem. I mean, whether we like it or not, and we can be very politically correct, but whether we like it or not, there is a problem.
No shit.
And we have to be sure that Muslims come in and report when they see something going on. When they see hatred going on, they have to report it. As an example, in San Bernardino, many people saw the bombs all over the apartment of the two people that killed 14 and wounded many, many people. Horribly wounded. They'll never be the same.
Maybe we stop having
wars.
wars.
Have to report the problems when they see them.
The problem is that there's so many fucking wars.
If they don't do that, it's a very difficult situation.
They won't do that if you don't have wars.
And you look at San Bernardino, and you look at the World Trade Center. Go outside, you look
at
Iraq, look at that horrible. These are
and Libya,
radical Islamic
terrorists, and Afghanistan.
And she won't even mention the word. Nor will President Obama. He won't use the term. Radical Islamic terrorism. Now,
freedom.
You have to be able to state what the
terrorism.
At least say the name. She won't say the name, and President Obama won't say the name.
I'll say it. Military-industrial complex.
It's radical Islamic terror.
It's radical America.
You have to say the name.
Secretary Clinton.
Say it.
Well, thank you for asking your question, and I've heard this question from a lot of Muslim Americans.
She hears a lot of questions, man.
Because, unfortunately, there's been a lot of very divisive, dark things said about Muslims, and even someone like Captain Khan, the young
bombs
man
being dropped on their asses,
defending our country in the United States Army, has been subject to attack by Donald. I want to say just a couple of things. First, we've had Muslims in America since George Washington.
Right.
We've had many successful
slaves.
Muslims. We just lost.
We had slaves through
a particularly well-known one with Muhammad Ali.
Say the name.
My vision of America is an America where everyone has a place. If you're willing to work hard, you do your part, you contribute to the community.
Oh, that's beautiful.
That's what America is. That's what we want America to be for our children and our grandchildren. It's also very short-sighted and even dangerous to be engaging in the kind of rhetoric that Donald has about Muslims. We need American Muslims to be bombing them, our eyes and ears on our front lines,
and destabilizing their countries.
With a lot of different Muslim groups.
Yes, she works a lot of them.
I've met with a lot of them, and I've heard how important it is for them to feel that they are wanted and included and part of our country, part of our homeland security, and that's what I want to see. It's also important. I intend to defeat ISIS, to do so in a coalition with majority Muslim nations. Right now, a lot of those nations are hearing what Donald says and wondering, why should we cooperate with the Americans? And this is a gift to ISIS and the terrorists. Violent, jihadist terrorists. We are not at war with Islam.
No!
And it is a mistake.
We don't have a war.
It plays into the hands of the terrorists.
We don't do no war.
To act as though we are.
Fuck it, don't act like we're at war.
Where citizens like you and your family are just as welcome as anyone else.
Secretary Clinton, Trump in December, you said this. Donald J. Trump is calling for a total and complete shutdown of Muslims entering the United States until our country's representatives can figure out what the hell is going on. We have no choice. We have no choice. Your running mate said this week that the Muslim ban is no longer your position. Is that correct? And if it is, was it a mistake to have a religious
That's a loaded
test?
question.
Captain Khan is an American hero.
Hero!
President at that time, he would be alive today.
Like Cortez!
Because
in Columbus!
Like her, who voted for the war without knowing what she was doing, I would not have had our people in Iraq. Iraq was a disaster.
Oh, I believe when I see it.
He would have been alive today. The Muslim ban is something that, in some form, has morphed into a extreme vetting from certain areas of the world. Hillary Clinton wants to allow.
Why did it morph into that? No, answer the question. Do you still believe? I do.
Me all the time. Why don't you interrupt her?
Please explain whether or not the Muslim ban still stands.
It's called extreme vetting. We are going to areas like Syria where they're coming in,
bombing the fuck out of them,
tens of thousands,
supplying
because of
terrorists.
Barack Obama, and Hillary Clinton wants to allow a 550% increase over Obama.
Because they're bombing them.
Country like we have no idea who they are, where they're from.
They're the people you bombed.
Feelings about our
you know where they're at.
And she wants 550%.
They hate your fucking country.
It's going to be the
great
culture
wars
of all time. We have enough problems in this country. I believe in building safe zones. I believe in having other people pay for them. As an example, the Gulf states who are not. And take care of people. But I don't want to have, with all the problems this country has and all of the problems that you see going on, hundreds of thousands of people coming in from Syria when we know nothing about them. We know nothing about their values, and we know nothing about their love for our country. So why are you fucking them up?
Terrorists.
Secretary Clinton, let me ask you about that. Because you have asked for an increase from 10 to 65,000 Syrian refugees. We know you want tougher vetting. That's not.
You want more war.
So why take the risk of having those refugees come into the country?
Well, first of all,
where are they coming from?
Anyone into our country that I think poses a risk to us.
Fuck you.
But there are a lot of refugees.
You pose a risk to Earth.
Women and children. Think of that picture we all saw of that 4-year-old boy with the blood on his forehead because
you made that
bombed by the Russian and
by
Syrian
the Russians,
air forces.
my ass.
There are
by your destabilization
suffering in this catastrophic war.
Russians didn't do that shit
because of Russian aggression.
Fuck off. Russian aggression. Russia didn't start war.
We by no means are carrying anywhere near the load that Europe and others
carrying bombs.
But we will have vetting that is as tough as it needs to be from our professionals, our intelligence experts, and others. But it is important for us as a policy, not to say, as Donald has said,
we did anything.
We're ban people based on a religion.
How about the wars?
We are a country founded on religious freedom and liberty. How do we do what he has advocated without causing great distress within our own country? Are we going to have religious tests when people fly into our country? And how do we expect to be able to implement those? So I thought that what he said was extremely unwise and even dangerous.
Some of the civil rights marches.
You can look at the propaganda on a lot of the terrorist sites, and what Donald
Trump
says
WikiLeaks
about Muslims
and the footage from the helicopters.
Fighters.
Fuck.
Because they
dropping
want to
bombs
create
on their family
between us. And the final thing
makes
I
them want to make war.
10th or 12th time that he's denied being for the war in Iraq. We have it on tape. The entire press corps has looked at it. It's been debunked, but it never stops him from saying whatever he wants to say.
It's not been debunked.
So please,
it's not been debunked.
Go to HillaryClinton.com and you can see it.
I was against
HillaryClinton.com, newscypher.com.
And you voted for it, and you shouldn't have.
They love war.
There's been lots of fact-checking on that. I'd like to move on to an online question.
She just went about 25 seconds over her time. Could I respond to
21.6.
Clinton? In terms of having people come into our country, we have many criminal illegal aliens.
Fuck you, you're a criminal.
To their country says we don't want them. In some cases, they're murderers, drug lords,
some cases you killed the presidents of their countries.
And Hillary Clinton, when she was Secretary of State, said, that's okay, we can't force it into their country. Let me tell you, I'm going to force them right back into their country. They're murderers and some very bad people.
Oh, my God.
I will tell you, very strong.
I hate this guy.
Bernie Sanders said she had bad judgment.
Bernie Sanders?
Really bad judgment because
why does he keep saying that?
People into this country that are going to cause problems and crime like you've
he
never
loves
seen.
Bernie.
We're also letting drugs pour through our southern border at a record clip. And it shouldn't be allowed.
How about the big pharma?
They've never endorsed
pharmaceutical drugs.
The Border Patrol agents, 16,500 just recently endorsed me.
Oh, shit.
And they endorsed me because I understand the border. She doesn't. She wants amnesty for everybody. Come right in. Come right over.
I wish.
It's a horrible thing she's doing. She's got bad judgment, and honestly, so bad.
And she bombs countries.
Be president of the United States. That I can
Thank you, Mr. Trump. I want to move on. This next question comes from the public to the Bipartisan Open Debate Coalition's online forum where Americans submitted questions that generated millions of votes.
Millions.
This question involves WikiLeaks' release of purported
go WikiLeaks.
Secretary Clinton's paid speeches, which she has refused to release, and one line in particular in which you, Secretary Clinton, purportedly say you need both a public and private position on certain issues. So, Virginia asks, is it okay for politicians to be two-faced? Is it acceptable for a politician to have a private stance on issues? Secretary Clinton, well, your 2 minutes.
Right, as I recall, that was something I said about Abraham Lincoln after having seen the wonderful Steven Spielberg movie called Lincoln.
Wonderful.
It was a master class watching President Lincoln get the Congress to approve the 13th Amendment. It was principled and it was strategic. And I was making the point that it is hard sometimes to get the Congress to do what you want to do, and you have to keep working at it. And yes, President Lincoln was trying to convince some people. He used some arguments. Convincing other people, he used other arguments. That was a great display of presidential leadership. But, you know, let's talk about what's really going on here, Martha, because our intelligence community just came out and said in the last meaning Putin and the Russian government, are directing the attacks, the hacking on American accounts to influence our election. And WikiLeaks is part of that.
Where's the proof of that?
Other sites where the Russians hack information. We don't even know if it's accurate information. And then they put it out.
Talk about what they put out.
In the history of our country, been in a situation where an adversary, a foreign power, is working so hard to influence the outcome of the election. And believe me, they're not doing it to get me elected. They're doing it to try to influence the election for Donald Trump. Now, maybe because he has praised Putin. Maybe because he says he agrees with what Putin wants to do. Maybe because he wants to do business in Moscow. I don't know the reasons. But we deserve answers. And we should demand that Donald release all of his tax returns so that people can see what are the entanglements and the financial relationships.
We're going to get to that later. Secretary Clinton, you're out of time.
Well, I think I should do that because it's so ridiculous. Look, now she's blaming, she got caught in a total lie. Her papers news went out to all her friends at the banks, Goldman Sachs and everybody else. And she said things, WikiLeaks, that just came out. And she lied. Now she's blaming the lie on the late, great Abraham Lincoln. That's one that I haven't. Okay, Honest Abe. Honest Abe never lied. That's the good thing. That's the big difference between Abraham Lincoln and you. That's a big, big difference.
Stop
We're talking
laughing.
about some difference. But as far as other elements of what she was saying, I don't know, Putin. I think it would be great if we got along with Russia, because we could fight ISIS together, as an example. But I don't know, Putin. But I notice anytime anything wrong happens, they like to say the Russians. She doesn't know if it's the Russians doing the hacking. Maybe there is no hacking. But they always blame Russia. And the reason they blame Russia because they think they're trying to tarnish me with Russia. I know nothing about Russia. I know about Russia, but I know nothing about the inner workings of Russia. I don't deal there. I have no business. I have no loans from Russia.
How about talking about Syria?
I have a very, very great balance sheet. So great that when I did the old post office on Pennsylvania Avenue, the United States government, because of my balance sheet, which they actually know very well, chose me to do the old post office between the White House and Congress. Chose me to do the old post office. One of the primary things, in fact, perhaps the primary thing, was balance sheet. But I have no loans with Russia. You could go to the United States government and they would probably tell you that, because they know my sheet very well in order to get that development. I had to have. Now, the taxes are a very simple thing. As soon as I have, first of all, I pay many of our friends took deductions. Warren Buffett took a massive deduction. Soros, who's a friend of hers, took a massive deduction. Many of the people that are giving her all this money that she can do many more commercials gave her, took massive deductions. I pay hundreds of millions of dollars in taxes. But as soon as my routine audit's finished, I'll release my returns. I'm very proud to actually do your job.
John, actually talking to taxes, we have a question from Spencer Moss. Spencer.
Good evening. My question is, what specific tax provisions you changed to ensure all most Americans pay their fair share in taxes?
Mr. Trump, you have 2 minutes.
The one thing I do is get rid of carried interest. One of the greatest provisions for people like me, to be honest with you. I give up a lot when I run, because I knock out the tax code.
Come on.
And she could have done this years ago.
I'm giving up nothing.
She was a United States Senator. She complained that Donald Trump took advantage of her.
No more lobbyists. All right, take this phone call, everybody. Take this phone call.
Change it when you were a senator. The reason you didn't is that all your friends take the same advantage that I do. And I do. You have provisions in the tax code that frankly we could change.
Businessman.
You wouldn't change it because all of these people
telling the truth of the game.
Money so you can take negative ads on Donald Trump. But, and I say that about a lot of things. You know, I've heard Hillary complaining about so many different things over the years. I wish she'd have done this. But she's been there for 30 years. She's been doing this stuff. She never changed, and she never will change. She never will change. We're getting rid of carried interest provisions.
Business going against politics.
Because I think it's so important for corporations, because we have corporations leaving massive corporations and little ones. Little ones can't form. We're getting rid of regulations, which goes hand in hand with the lowering of the taxes. But we're bringing the tax rate down from 35% to 50.7. And I will tell you, we are cutting a big lead for the middle class. And I will tell you, Hillary Clinton is raising your taxes, folks. You can look at me. She's raising your taxes really high. And what that's going to do is a disaster for the country. But she is raising your taxes and I'm lowering your taxes. That in itself is a big difference. We are going to be thriving again.
Don't trust the businessman.
There's no growth. If China has a GDP of 7%, it's like a national catastrophe.
Bullshit, it does.
We're down at 1%.
That's a lie.
And that's like no growth. And we're going lower, in my opinion. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that our taxes are so high, just about the highest in the world. And I'm bringing them down to one of the lower.
We got to pay for war.
And I think it's so important, one of the most important things we can do. But she is raising everybody's taxes massively.
Secretary Clinton, you have 2 minutes. The question was, what specific tax provisions will you change to ensure the wealthiest Americans pay their fair share of taxes?
Well, everything you've heard just now from Donald is not true.
Of course.
I'm sorry I have to keep saying this, but he lives in an alternative reality. And it is sort of amusing to hear somebody who hasn't paid federal income taxes in maybe 20 years talking about what he's going to do. But I'll tell you what he's going to do. His plan will give the wealthy and corporations the biggest tax cuts they've ever had. More than the Bush tax cuts by at least a factor of 2. Donald always takes care of Donald and people like Donald. And this would be a massive gift.
She takes care of people like Donald.
And indeed, the way that he talks about his tax cuts would end up raising taxes on middle-class families, millions of middle-class families.
They both want the same shit.
I have said nobody who makes less than $250,000 a year,
she's two-faced.
The vast majority of Americans,
she's doing what Abraham Lincoln does, remember?
Their taxes raised, because I think we've got to go where the money is, and the money is with people who've taken advantage of every single break in the tax code. And yes, when I was a senator, I did vote to close corporate loopholes. I voted to close, I think, one of the loopholes.
Why was she a senator?
He claimed $1 billion
How does that happen?
Loss that enabled him to avoid paying taxes. I want to have a tax on people who are making $1 million. It's called the Buffett rule. Yes, Warren Buffett is the one who's gone out and said somebody like him should not be paying a lower tax rate than his secretary.
It's nice he says that.
I want to have a surcharge on incomes above $5 million. We have to make up for lost times because I want to invest in you. I want to invest in hardworking families. And I think it's been unfortunate, but it's happened that since the Great Recession, the gains have all gone to the top. And we need to reverse that. People like Donald who paid 0 in taxes, 0 for our bets, 0 for our...
1.7.
0.
And we're going to make sure that nobody, no corporation and no individual can get away without paying his fair share.
Right.
Mr. Trump, I want to give you a chance to respond.
Right.
I just want to tell viewers what she's referring to.
Robin Hood.
Taxes were the #1 issue on Facebook for the first time in the campaign.
What?
The New York Times published
Facebook
3 pages
again?
of your 1995 tax return that show you claimed a $960 million loss, which means you could have avoided paying personal federal income taxes for years. You've said you pay state taxes, employee taxes, real estate taxes, property taxes. You have not answered, though, a simple question. Did you use
Where's all the tax money going?
To avoid paying personal federal income taxes for
Of course I do.
Where's the tax money going?
And so do all of her donors, or most of her donors. I know many of her
Power
donors.
play.
Her donors took massive tax write-offs.
They're all the same.
A lot of my write-off was depreciation and other things that Hillary, as a senator, allowed. And she'll always allow it because the people that give her all this money, they want it. That's why. See, I understand the tax code better than anybody that's ever run for president. Hillary Clinton, and it's extremely complex, Hillary Clinton has friends that want all of these provisions, including they want the carried interest provision, which is very important to Wall Street people, but they really want the carried interest provision, which I believe Hillary's leaving. It's very interesting why she's leaving carried interest, but I will tell you that, #1, I pay tremendous numbers of taxes. I absolutely used it, and so did Warren Buffett, and so did George Soros, and so did many of the other people that Hillary is getting money from. Now, I won't mention their names because they're rich, but they're not famous, so we won't make them famous.
So can you say how many years you have avoided paying personal federal income taxes?
Oh, that's a biased question, moderator.
I pay federal tax too, but I have a write-off. A lot of it's depreciation, which is a wonderful charge. I love depreciation. You know, she's given it to us. Hey, if she had a problem, for 30 years she's been doing this, Anderson. I say it all the time. She talks about health care. Why didn't she do something about it? She talks about taxes. Why didn't she do something about it? She doesn't do anything about anything other than talk. With her, it's all talk and no action.
In the past,
and again, Bernie Sanders, it's really bad judgment. She has made bad judgment not only on taxes, she's made bad judgments on Libya, on Syria, on Iraq. I mean, her and Obama, whether you like it or not, the way they got out of Iraq, the vacuum they've left, that's why ISIS formed in the first place. They started from that little area, and now they're in 32 different nations, Hillary. Congratulations, great job.
Why don't you be able to respond, Secretary Clinton?
That's all the truth there.
Well, here we go again. I've been in favor of getting rid of carried interest for years, starting when I was a senator from New York.
Average speed, 21.9.
The senator with a Republican president.
Oh, really?
I will be the president who will get it done.
If you were an effective senator, you could have done it. If you were an effective senator, you could have done it. But you were not an effective.
Please allow her to respond. She didn't interrupt you.
Let her respond.
Under our Constitution, presidents have something called veto power. Look, he has now said repeatedly, 30 years this and 30 years that. So let me talk about my 30 years in public service. I'm very glad to do so.
Talk about it.
8 million kids every year. First Lady, I worked with Democrats and Republicans to create the Children's Health Insurance Program.
She's a hero for children.
Thousands of kids now have a chance to be adopted.
Yeah, because she killed their parents.
Our adoption and foster care system.
Because she's
After
sick of the
9/11,
war.
I went to work with Republican mayor, governor, and president to rebuild New York and to get health care for our
some other
first
countries
responders who were suffering because they had run toward danger and gotten sickened by it. Hundreds of thousands of National Guard and Reserve members have health care because of work that I did.
Freedom!
And children have safer medicines because I was able to pass a law that required the dosing to be more carefully done. When I was Secretary of State, I went around the world advocating for our country, but also advocating for women's rights, to make sure that women had a decent chance to have a better life, and negotiated a treaty with Russia to lower nuclear weapons.
Fuck Russia, right? What are we talking about Russia? We hate them.
400 pieces of legislation have my name on it.
I'll bet they do.
As a sponsor or co-sponsor when I was a senator for 8 years.
Bomb orders.
I worked very hard and was very proud to be re-elected in New York by an even bigger margin than I had been elected the first time.
How does that even happen?
And as president, I will take that work, that bipartisan work, that finding common ground. Because you have to be able to get along with people to get things done in Washington.
Thank you, Secretary.
And I've proven that I can. And for 30 years, I've produced results for
Thank you, Secretary.
Oh my God, no, you haven't.
Both of you have
it's a mess.
Said a lot of things.
I
mean, I think we should be
can,
allowed.
No, Mr. Trump, we're going to go on. This is about the audience.
Disaster as a
Mr. Trump, we're going to move on.
All the senators are disasters.
The heartbreaking video of a 5-year-old Syrian boy named Amran sitting in an ambulance after being pulled from the rubble.
Look at the WikiLeaks video.
An airstrike in Aleppo.
She did that.
Focused the world's attention on the horrors of the war in Syria.
The world was already focused, man.
136 million views on Facebook alone.
Facebook.
There are much worse images coming out of Aleppo every day now, where in the past few weeks alone, 400 people have been killed, at least 100 of them children.
No shit, that's been happening 20 years.
Called for a war crimes investigation of the Syrian regime of Bashar al-Assad and his ally.
2.0.
How about the American regime?
Comes from social media through Facebook.
Social media, who's that?
Asks, if you were president, what would you do about Syria and the humanitarian crisis in Aleppo?
World War III.
Isn't it a lot like the Holocaust when the U.S. waited too long before we helped? Secretary Clinton, we will begin with your 2 minutes.
Well, the situation in Syria is catastrophic, and
she loves
every day that goes by, we see the results of the regime.
The results of her own work.
Assad in partnership with the Iranians on the ground,
Libya,
the Russians in the air,
Afghanistan,
bombarding places, in particular Aleppo.
Who bombards places?
There are hundreds of thousands of people, probably about 250,000 still left.
Black.
And there is a determined effort by the Russian Air Force to destroy Aleppo.
Are you kidding me?
In order to
look at the American Air Force.
The last of the Syrian rebels who were really holding out against the Assad regime.
Who are the rebels?
Russia hasn't paid any attention to ISIS. They're interested in keeping Assad in power. So when I was Secretary of State, advocated, and I advocate today, a no-fly zone and safe zones. We need some leverage with the Russians because they're not going to
World War III, man.
To the negotiating table for a diplomatic resolution unless there is some leverage over them. And we have to work more closely with our partners and allies on the ground. But I want to emphasize that what is at stake here is the ambitions and the aggressiveness of Russia.
Are you kidding me?
Russia has decided that it's all in Syria.
Russia's not in a war.
And they've also decided who they want to see become president of the United States too, and it's not me.
What the fuck?
I stood up to Russia. I've taken on Putin and others. And I would do that as president. I think Wherever we can cooperate with Russia,
she's
that's
a
fine.
military,
And I did, as Secretary of State.
industrialist,
that's how we got a treaty reducing nuclear weapons. It's how we got the sanctions
short-term memory loss.
Put a lid on the Iranian nuclear program without firing a single shot.
Oh, shit,
so I would go to the negotiating table with more leverage than we have now. But I do support the effort to investigate for crimes, war crimes committed by the Syrians and the Russians and try to hold them accountable.
Thank you, Secretary.
First of all, she was there as Secretary of State with the so-called line in the sand.
Hypocrisy.
No, I wasn't. I was gone. I hate to interrupt you, but
you were in contact. Excuse me.
At some point, we need to do
You were in total contact
here.
with the White House, and perhaps, sadly, Obama probably still listened to you. I don't think he'd be listening very much anymore. Obama draws the line in the sand. It was laughed at all over the world what happened.
Average speed,
and with that being
21.8.
But our nuclear program has fallen way behind, and they've gone wild with their nuclear program. Not good. Our government shouldn't have allowed that to happen.
Oh, another military industrialist. More bombs.
We are old, we're tired, we're exhausted in terms of nuclear.
Are you kidding me?
A very bad thing.
We spend more money than any other country in the world.
Really tough against Putin and against Assad. She talks in favor of the rebels. She doesn't even know who the rebels are. You know, every time
she made the rebels.
Whether it's in Iraq or anywhere else, we're arming people. And you know what happens? They end up being worse than the people. Look at what she did in Libya with Gaddafi. Gaddafi's out. It's a mess. And by the way, ISIS has a good chunk of their oil. I'm sure you probably have heard that. It was a disaster. Because the fact is, almost everything she's done in foreign policy has been a mistake, and it's been a disaster. But if you look at Russia, just take a look at Russia, and look at what they did this week, where I agree she wasn't there, but possibly she's consulted. We sign a peace treaty. Everyone's all excited. Well, what Russia did with Assad, and by the way, with Iran, who you made very powerful with the dumbest deal perhaps I've ever seen in the history of deal making, the Iran deal with $150 billion, with the $1.7 billion in cash, which is enough cash to fill up this room. But look at that deal. Iran now and Russia are now against us. So she wants to fight. She wants to fight for rebels. There's only one problem. You don't even know who the rebels are.
Mr. Trump,
so
Mr. Trump, your 2 minutes
and one thing I have to say,
your 2 minutes
I don't like Assad at all, but Assad is killing ISIS. Russia is killing ISIS, and Iran is killing ISIS. And those three have now lined up because of our weak foreign policy.
Mr. Trump, let me repeat the question. If you were president, what would you do about Syria and the humanitarian crisis in Aleppo? And I want to remind you what your running mate said. He said provocations by Russia need to be met with American strength, and that if Russia continues to be involved in airstrikes along with the Syrian government forces of Assad, the United States of America should be prepared to use military force to strike the military targets of the Assad regime.
Same thing she said.
I disagree. I disagree.
You disagree with your running mate.
I think we have to knock out ISIS. Right now, Syria is fighting ISIS. We have people that want to fight both at the same time. But Syria is no longer Syria. Syria is Russia, and it's Iran, who she made strong, and Kerry and Obama made into a very powerful nation and a very rich nation very, very quickly. Very, very quickly. I believe we have to get ISIS. We have to worry about ISIS before we can add too much more involved. And that was the line.
What do you think will happen if Aleppo falls?
I think Aleppo is a disaster humanitarian-wise.
What do you think will happen if it falls?
I think that it basically has fallen, okay? It basically has fallen. Let me tell you something. You take a look at Mosul. The biggest problem I have with the stupidity.
Why are those cities like that?
We have Mosul. They think a lot of the ISIS leaders are in Mosul. So we have announcements coming out of Washington and coming out of Iraq. We will be attacking Mosul in 3 weeks or 4 weeks.
How about stop attacks?
Leaders from ISIS are leaving Mosul. Why can't they do it quietly? Why can't they do the attack? Make it a sneak attack. And after the attack is made, inform the American public that we've knocked out the leaders. We've had a tremendous success. People leave. Why do they have to say we're going to be attacking Mosul within the next 4 to 6 weeks, which is what they're saying?
Attack everything all the time.
How stupid is our country?
There are sometimes reasons the military does that. Psychological warfare.
I can't think of any. I can't think of any.
The moderator talking.
We have General Flynn, and we have, look, I have 200 generals and admirals who endorse me. I have 21 Congressional Medal of Honor recipients who endorse me. We talk about it all the time.
Nazi heroes.
They understand. Why can't they do something secretively?
Military-industrial complex supports him.
Why would these people stay there?
They support everybody.
Tell me what your strategy is.
For weeks about Mosul, that it's the harbor of where, between Raqqa and Mosul, this is where they think the ISIS leaders are. Why would they be staying? They're not staying there anymore. They're gone. Because everybody's talking about how Iraq, which is us, with our leadership, goes in to fight Mosul. Now, with these 200 admirals and generals, they can't believe it. All I say is this: General George Patton, General Douglas MacArthur are spinning in their grave at the stupidity of what we're doing in the Middle East.
I'm going to go to Secretary Clinton. Secretary Clinton, you want Assad to go. You advocated arming rebels, but it looks like that may be too late for Aleppo. You talk about diplomatic efforts. Those have failed. Ceasefires have failed. Would you introduce the threat of U.S. military force beyond a no-fly zone against the Assad regime to back up diplomacy?
I would not use American ground forces in Syria.
That's what she said about Libya.
A very serious mistake.
And look what happened.
I don't think American troops should be holding territory, which is what they would have to do as an occupying force. I don't think that is
they don't do that
strategy.
anywhere.
I do think the use of special forces, which we're using, the use of enablers and trainers in Iraq, which has had some positive effects, are very much in our interest. And so I do support what is happening.
Average speed,
But what would you do?
1.9.
Positive effects.
Martha, I hope that by the time I hope by the time I am president, that we will have pushed ISIS out of Iraq. I do think that there is a good chance that we can take Mosul. And, Donald says he knows more about ISIS than the generals. No, he doesn't. There are a lot of very important planning going on, and some of it is to signal to the Sunnis in the area, as well as Kurdish Peshmerga fighters, that we all need to be in this, and that takes a lot of planning and preparation. I would go after Baghdadi. I would specifically target Baghdadi, because I think our targeting of Al-Qaeda leaders, and I was involved in a lot of those operations, highly classified ones, made a difference. So I think that could help. I would also consider arming the Kurds.
Arm everybody.
The Kurds have been our best partners in Syria as well as Iraq.
How much I like that.
I know there's a lot of concern about that in some circles, but I think they should have the equipment they need so that Kurdish and Arab fighters on the ground are the principal way that we take Raqqa after pushing ISIS out of Iraq.
Thank you very much. We're going to move on.
She went over a minute over, and you don't stop her. When I go 1 second over, it's like...
You had many answers.
It's really very interesting.
We've got a question over here from James Carter. Mr. Carter?
Can you tell me how to grab...
My question is...
Just kidding.
Do you believe you can be a devoted
Last
president?
1313.
That question begins for Mr. Trump.
I believe I can fly.
I mean, she calls our people deplorable, a large group, and irredeemable. I will be a president for all of our people, and I'll be a president that will turn our inner cities around, and will give strength to people, and will give economics to people, and will bring
corporate
jobs
enslavement.
back. NAFTA, signed by her husband, is perhaps the greatest disaster trade deal in the history of the world, not in this country. It stripped us of manufacturing jobs. We lost our jobs. We lost our money. We lost our plants. It is a disaster. And now she wants to sign TPP, even though she says now she's for it. She called it the gold standard. And by the way, at the last debate, she lied, because it turned out that she did say the gold standard, and she said she didn't say it. They actually said that
I need to put my tire up.
Okay, and she lied, but she's lied about a lot of things. I would be a president for
Abraham Lincoln.
African Americans, the inner cities. Devastating what's happening to our inner cities. She's been talking about it for years, as usual.
22.0.
How about talk about education?
Same with the Latino Americans.
How about free
Hispanic
education?
Americans. The same exact thing. They talk, they don't get it done. You go into the inner cities and you see it's 45% poverty. African Americans now 45% poverty in the inner cities. The education is a disaster.
Yes.
Jobs are essentially non-existent.
Yes.
I mean, it's...
But why?
And I've been saying at big speeches where I have 20 and 30,000 people, what do you have to lose? It can't get any worse. And she's been talking about the inner cities for 25 years. Nothing's going to ever happen. Let me tell you, if she's president of the United States, nothing's going to happen. It's just going to be talking. All of her friends, the taxes we were talking about, and I would just get it by osmosis. She's not doing any me favors. But by doing all the others favors, she's doing me favors.
Mr. Trump, thank you.
But I will tell you, she's all talk. It doesn't get done. All you have to do is take a look at her Senate run. Take a look at upstate New York.
Your 2 minutes is up. Secretary Clinton,
it turned out to be a disaster.
You have 2 minutes, Secretary Clinton.
Well, 67% of the people voted to re-elect me when I ran for my second term, and I was very proud. Very humbled by that.
How about Bernie's people? Who cares about votes?
I have tried my entire life
that shit don't
to
work.
do what I can to support children and families.
Oh, she's a children's hero.
Out of law school, I went to work for the Children's Defense Fund, and Donald talks a lot about, you know,
Clinton,
the 30 years I've been in public service. I'm proud of that.
Oh,
I started off as a young lawyer working against discrimination against African American children in schools and in the criminal justice system. I worked to make sure that kids with disabilities could get a public education, something that I care very much about.
My ass, you can.
I have worked with Latinos. One of my first jobs in politics was down in South Texas, registering Latino citizens to be able to vote. So I have a deep devotion to use your
CV,
absolutely correct word, to making sure that every American feels like he or she has a place in our country.
I don't feel like that.
And I think when you look at the letters that I get, a lot of people are worried that maybe they wouldn't have a place in Donald Trump's America. They write me, and one woman wrote me about
38,000 emails.
She adopted him from Ethiopia when he was a toddler. He's 10 years old now. It's the only country he's ever known. And he listens to Donald on TV, and he said to his mother one day, will he send me back to Ethiopia if he gets elected?
So much goddamn email.
You know, children listen
to
what is being said, to go back to the very, very first question. And there's a lot of fear. In fact, teachers and parents are calling it the Trump effect. Bullying is up.
We're fear of war.
Uneasy. A lot of kids are expressing their concerns. So first and foremost,
stop war.
I will do everything I can to reach out to everybody. Democrats, Republicans, independents, people across our country.
She's a hero.
Vote for me, I still want to be your president. I want to be the best president I can be for every American.
Oh my God. That's so beautiful.
Said to you, a comment you made last month. You said that half of Donald Trump's supporters are, quote, deplorables, racist, sexist, homophobic, xenophobic, Islamophobic. You later said you regretted saying half. You didn't express regret for using the term deplorables. To Mr. Carter's question, how can you unite a country if you've written off tens of millions of Americans?
Well, within hours, I said that I was sorry about the way I talked about that, because my argument is not with his supporters, it's with him.
Abraham Lincoln.
With the hateful and divisive campaign that he has run, and the inciting of violence at his rallies, and the very brutal kinds of comments about not just women.
What are we talking about?
Americans, all kinds of Americans.
What happened to Bernie Sanders and the people that can't vote?
What he has said about African Americans and Latinos, about Muslims, about POWs, about immigrants, about people with disabilities, he's never apologized for. And so I do think that a lot of the tone and tenor that he has said. I'm proud of the campaign that Bernie Sanders and I ran. We ran a campaign based on issues, not insults, and he is supporting me 100%.
Oh my
because we
God!
talked about what we wanted to do. We might have had some differences,
fucked up.
and we had a lot of debates, but we believed that we could make the country better. And
Bernie
I was proud of
Sanders.
that.
I'll give you a minute 20
We
seconds.
have a divided nation. We have a very divided nation. You look at Charlotte, you look at Baltimore, you look at the violence that's taking place in the inner cities, Chicago. You take a look at Washington, D.C.
No jobs, no school.
We have a increase in
hope
within our cities, the biggest in 45 years. We have a divided nation because people like her, and believe me, she has tremendous hate in her heart. And when she said deplorables, she meant it.
Lady Cortez.
And when she said irredeemable, they're irredeemable. You didn't mention that. But when she said they're irredeemable, to me that might have been even worse.
She said some of them are irredeemable.
She's got tremendous hatred. And this country cannot take another 4 years of Barack Obama, and that's what you're getting with her.
Mr. Trump, let me follow up with you. In 2008, you wrote in one of your books that the most important characteristic of a good leader is discipline. You said if the leader doesn't have it, quote, he or she won't be one for very long. In the days after the first debate, you sent out a series of tweets from 3 a.m. to 5 a.m., including one that told people to check out a sex tape. Is that the discipline of
It wasn't check out a sex tape. It was just take a look at the person that she... Girl Scout, who was no Girl Scout. By the way, just so you understand, when she said 3 o'clock in the morning, take a look at Benghazi. She said, who's going to answer the call at 3 o'clock in the morning? Guess what? She didn't answer because when Ambassador Stevens...
Question is that the discipline of a good leader?
600 times. Well, she said she was awake at 3 o'clock in the morning. And she also sent a tweet out at 3 o'clock in the morning, but I won't even mention that. But she said she'll be awake. Who's the famous thing? We're going to answer our call at 3 o'clock in the morning. Guess what happened? Ambassador Stevens sent 600 requests for help. And the only one she talked to was Sidney Blumenthal, who's her friend and not a good guy, by the way. So, you know, she shouldn't be talking about that. Now, tweeting happens to be a modern day form of communication. I mean, you can like it or not like it. I have, between Facebook and Twitter, I have almost 25 million people.
Jesus.
It's a very effective way of communication.
It's on his own YouTube channel.
Down, but it is a very effective form of communication.
To Trump, huh?
I'm not unproud of it, to be honest with you.
Secretary Clinton, does Mr. Trump have the discipline to be a good leader?
No.
I'm shocked to hear that.
Well, it's not only my opinion, it's the opinion of many others, national security experts, Republicans, former Republican members of Congress. But it's in part because those of us who have had the great privilege of seeing this job up close and know how difficult it is, and it's not just because I watched my husband take a $300 billion deficit and turn it into a $200 billion surplus.
And I'm the queen.
2 million new jobs were created, and incomes went up for everybody. Everybody. African American incomes went up 33%. And it's not just because I worked with George W. Bush after 9/11. And I was very proud that when I told him what the city needed, what we needed to recover, he said, you've got it, and he never wavered. He stuck with me. And I have worked, and I admire President Obama. He inherited the worst financial crisis since the Great Depression. That was a terrible time for our country.
How did that happen?
9 million people lost their jobs, 5 million homes were lost, and $13 trillion in family wealth was wiped out. We are back on the right track to recession with his tax plans.
Secretary Clinton, we are moving to an audience question. We're almost out of time. We have another. Mr. Trump, we're moving to an audience question.
It is our country.
Mr. Trump, Secretary Clinton, we want to get to the audience.
That's true.
Thank you very much, both of you. We have another audience question. Beth Miller has a question for both candidates.
Eddie Miller.
Good evening. Perhaps the most important aspect of this election is the Supreme Court. As the most important aspect of selecting a Supreme Court justice.
We begin with your 2 minutes, Secretary Clinton.
Thank you. Well, you're right. This is one of the most important issues in this election.
You're right.
I want to appoint Supreme Court justices who understand the way the world really works who have real life experience.
She understands.
Who have not just been in a big law firm and maybe clerked for a judge and then gotten on the bench, but maybe they tried some more cases. They actually understand what people are up against, because I think the current court has gone in the wrong direction. And so I would want to see the Supreme Court reverse Citizens United and get dark, unaccountable money out of our politics. Donald doesn't agree with that. I would like the Supreme Court to understand that voting rights are still a big problem in many parts of our country, that we don't always do everything we can to make it possible for people of color and older people and young people to be able to exercise their
Bernie
franchise.
Sanders supporters.
I want a Supreme Court that will stick with Roe v. Wade and a woman's right to choose, and I want a Supreme Court that will stick with marriage equality.
I want it now.
Now, Donald has put forth the names of some people that he would consider, and among the ones that he has suggested are people who would reverse Roe v. Wade and reverse marriage equality. I think that would be a terrible mistake and would take us backwards. I want a Supreme Court that doesn't always side with corporate interests. I want a Supreme Court that understands, because you're wealthy and you can give more money to something doesn't mean you have any more rights or should have any more rights than anybody else. So I have very clear views about what I want to see.
That's why she makes so much money
on the Supreme
from
Court.
Wall Street.
And I regret deeply that the Senate has not done its job.
That's why.
And they have not permitted a vote on the person that President Obama, a highly qualified person, they've not given him a vote to be able to have the full complement of 9 Supreme Court justices. I think that was a dereliction of duty. I hope that they will see their way to doing it, but if I am so fortunate enough as to be president, I will immediately move to make sure that we fill that. We have 9 justices
Secretary
and get to work on behalf of our people.
Thank you. You're out of time, Mr. Trump.
Justice Scalia, great judge, died recently, and we have a vacancy. I am looking to appoint judges very much in the mold of
1252.
Looking for
more of the
judges, and I've actually picked 20 of them so that people would see highly respected, highly thought of, and actually very beautifully reviewed by just about everybody, but people that will respect of the United States. I think that this is so important. Also, the Second Amendment, which is totally under siege by people like Hillary Clinton. They'll respect the Second Amendment and what it stands for.
How about China
so
in the South China
Hillary
Sea?
mentioned something about contributions, just so you understand. So
how about localized production?
In my race, more than 100
How about
million
Elon Musk and Tesla?
Meaning I'm not taking all of this big money from all of these different corporations like she's doing. What I ask is this, so I'm putting in more than, by the time it's finished, I'll have more than $100 million invested. Pretty much self-funding mine. We're raising money for the Republican Party, and we're doing tremendously on the small donation, $61 average or so.
Investing.
I asked Hillary, why doesn't she made $250 million by being in office? She used the power of her office to make a lot of money. Why isn't she funding, not for $100 million, but why don't you put 10 or 20 or 25 or $30 million into your own campaign?
How about putting in a SpaceX?
$30 million less for special interests that will tell you exactly what to do. And it would really, I think,
he's
be a
not
nice
a senator.
To the American
he
public.
got a lot done.
Some money in. You have a lot of it. You made a lot of it because of the fact that you've been in office. You made a lot of it while you were Secretary of State, actually. So why aren't you putting money into your own campaign? I'm just curious.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you. We're going to get on to one more question.
Oh, no.
The Supreme Court, and I
answer the question.
Quickly.
I respect the Second Amendment, but I believe there should be comprehensive background checks.
Talk about the money.
Close the gun show loophole and close the online loophole.
We have one more question,
Mrs.
Lives
as we possibly can.
Talk about the money.
Question from Ken Bone about energy policy. Ken?
Talk about Tesla.
What steps will your energy policy take to meet our energy needs?
Solar City.
While at the same time remaining environmentally friendly.
Gigafactory.
And minimizing job loss for fossil power plant workers.
Renewable energy.
So I think it's such a great question because energy is under siege by the Obama administration. Under absolute siege.
Off. Big
the
oil.
EPA, Environmental Protection Agency, is killing these energy companies. And foreign companies are now coming in, buying so many of our different plants, and then rejiggering the plant so that they can take care of their oil. We are killing, absolutely killing, our energy business in this country. Now, I'm all for alternative forms of energy, including wind, including solar, etc. But we need much more than wind and solar. And you look at our miners. Hillary Clinton wants to put all the miners out of business.
More solar.
There is a thing called clean coal. Coal will last for 1,000 years in this country.
Sunlight's
now
free.
We have natural gas and so many other things because of technology.
Clean solar.
Unbelievable. We have found tremendous growth right under us.
Right.
So good, especially when you have 20 trillion in debt. Bring our energy companies back. They'll be able to compete. They'll make money. They'll pay off our national debt. They'll pay off our tremendous budget deficits, which are tremendous.
How about stop war?
Our energy companies out of business. We have to bring back our workers. You take a look at what's happening to steel and the cost of steel, and China dumping vast amounts of steel all over the United States, which essentially is killing our steel workers and our steel companies.
WTO, why not talk about WTO?
Our energy companies, we have to make it possible.
Don't talk about the WTO.
It's so restrictive that they are putting our energy companies out of business. And all you have to do is go to a great place like West Virginia, places like Ohio, which is phenomenal, or places like Pennsylvania, and you see what they're doing to the people, miners and others in the energy business. It's a disgrace.
Your time is up. Thank you,
sir.
It's
an absolute disgrace.
Senator Clinton, 2 minutes.
Well, that was very interesting. First of all, China is illegally dumping steel in the United States, and Donald Trump is buying it to build his buildings, putting steel workers and American steel plants out of business. That's something that I fought against as a senator, and that I would have a trade prosecutor to make sure that we don't get taken advantage of by China on steel or anything else.
Talk about the WTO.
Know, because it sounds like you're in the business or you're aware of people in the business. You know that we are now, for the first time ever, energy independent.
WTO.
We are not dependent upon the Middle East, but the Middle East still controls a lot of the prices. So the price of oil has been way down, and that has had a damaging effect on a lot of the oil companies.
And no talk about WTO.
We are, however, producing a lot of natural gas, which serves as a bridge to more renewable fuels.
Yeah, that's great.
I think that's an important transition. Right. We've got to remain energy independent. It gives us much more power and freedom than to be worried about what goes on in the Middle East.
We have Elon Musk
over there without having to worry about that.
Tell about Elon Musk.
So I have a comprehensive energy policy, but it really does include fighting climate change, because I think that is a serious problem.
Oh my God.
And I support moving toward more clean, renewable energy as quickly as we can, because I think we can be the 21st century clean energy superpower.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Millions of new jobs and businesses. But I also want to be sure that we don't leave people behind. That's why I'm the only candidate from the very beginning of this campaign who had a plan to help us revitalize coal country.
Roads to hell.
Grandfathers, they dug that coal out. A lot of them lost their lives. They were injured, but they turned the lights on and they powered our factories. I don't want to walk away from them, so we've got to do something for them. But the price of coal is down worldwide. So we have to look at this comprehensively, and that's exactly what I have proposed. I hope we'll go to HillaryClinton.com and we have my entire policy.
One more audience question.
We've sneaked in one more question, and it comes from Carl Becker.
All right.
My question to both of you is, regardless of the current rhetoric, would either of you
beautiful question.
name one positive thing that you respect in one another?
A warm, fuzzy question. What a warm, fuzzy question, huh?
Would you like to go first?
Crackhead Central. Yeah. Oh, Lamping Byway. All right, everybody. This is Robert with Deep Thought Cycle.
And I think that says a lot about Donald.
What we just heard was nothing. I really like what they say in German. They say, alles und nicht. We heard everything and nothing. Actually, I heard nothing and nothing. Actually, what we did hear is we heard big business directly bypassing lobbyists, using a little bit of truth when they need to. It's like when we turn from politics, even though politics is a lie, and this, it's like fascism. On the eve of fascism. Unbelievable. Oh, nice, nice, nice. I gotta get my money. You know, if you're listening to the debate very carefully, we hear, if it was two politicians, they wouldn't be talking about what Donald Trump was talking about because they all play the same. But we hear a big businessman who's saying a lot of truth because normally he pays a lobbyist and they pull the strings from behind. Shishne. And we hear even a bigger businessman, Hillary Clinton. It's just like two businesses fighting. Nothing about politics. Nobody cares. Businesses don't care for people. You ever see a business compete to help people? Businesses are what create design obsolescence. Would trickle out technology that could help a lot of people, just why they find the best way to make profit off of it and string you along as long as they can until they can get as much profit before going to the next technological level. It's technology that actually sets people free, and we don't have any scientists. We don't need any more businessmen, whether it be the old school, under the table, back dealing politician type business, or the direct in your face Donald Trump business. We really need people like Elon Musk, and they're in short supply. We need people that want to actually see technology help people, see kids go to school, not the fake people that act like they care. I mean, does she even act like she cares? I mean, it's so dry. It's like a fake marriage when you're her talk about caring. Come on, man. I mean, go to a poor person's marriage where two people are poor and they love each other or something. That's beautiful. But what we hear right now is the doorway to fascism being opened wider by two people that are the same, and a whole lot of sheep. My dog. Oh, it's my dog want to come out. Elon, take it easy. Alright, everybody, this is Robert. Are we still on? We're still on here. This is Robert. Deep Thought Cycles special debate coverage. Can't believe that the battery lasted on the camera and my phone. And God help us all, because I don't know what's gonna happen. But I gotta go. Gotta try to get new Cypher blog before I go to bed. Take it easy. I hope you had a good ride. It's Bobby over there in the window saying hi. Can't see him. Alright, everybody. See you later. Bye.